no matter how good you try to do in life, you could try to do everything right, and it's always a bunch of obstacles put in your way to actually stagnate you. People will tell you things that you can't do just because they're not capable of doing it. So I done stayed in a hotel before. I felt that part, and I had to rebuild myself. You know what, to be honest,
Today we have Keycha Gallon on the channel, and the movie that she says, one of the movies that she said relates to her lived experiences is The Pursuit of Happyness. For the world that don't know, how does this movie relate to your life?
I feel like for me, just like the Declaration of Independence, and he states it in the movie, everyone is in a pursuit of happiness, where everyone should be thought as equal, but it's not like that in the real world.
That's my money. How is somebody
just like in a movie, I feel like no matter how good you try to do in life, you could try to do everything right, and it's always a bunch of obstacles put in your way to actually stagnate you. Where, he tried to start his own business, he tried to raise his child. So I have 2 kids, and I think that initially I was married when I had my 2 kids. And then I went through a divorce. So it's like it was me and my daughter, and it was like, and my son was older. So it's like me and her against the world. It was harder because I had to transition to one income. So when I transitioned to the one income, I had always been in the working world, had always been in the union, had worked for Kaiser the majority of my life. But it was like, no matter how many degrees you get, you're still never good enough to actually take the position that you know you deserve, take the position that you actually work for, that you earn, because for one is your color, and then for 2, I'm not the type of person to conform to a lot of, I guess I'm gonna say, Hitler style directive giving. I feel like we all have our own brain. We bring different aspects to the company. So I think the more ideas, the more, different perspective on things is a good thing in the work field. And a lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people, even our people, don't want us to actually, succeed or elevate in life. So I think a lot of people want us to stay marginalized, and that's just not me. So I just find other ways to go around things to make my life a little easier.
And for those who don't know, those who haven't seen the movie, The Pursuit of Happyness, starring Will Smith and Thandie Newton and Jalen Smith, it's based on the life of a real person, Chris Gardner. And at the time of this movie, he's a salesman. As you said, he tried to control his own narrative, buying all these bone density scanners, and he had a big vision, thought it was going to pay off, but he was met break after break, hardship after hardship, taking loss after loss, and not only took a toll on himself, but his family as well. And throughout all that hardship, he still persevered. Along as he came across a stockbroker where he was inspired to become one himself, and he entered into a non-paid internship, at Dean Witter, and no promise of a salary, no promise of how things was going to turn out in the future, but he took a leap, and throughout that process, it paid off, and it changed him and his son's life for the better. With all things considered, that's the part that I identify with. Just everything coming at you that gives you every reason to turn negative, because nothing seems to be going right when you're trying to do right. But with that, since I've got on this positive path now, I still stayed the course like he did. But more specifically, with all those things considered, how much of that relates to your life, or like everything that was coming at him, but yet you still persevered?
So I'm gonna say it resonated with me because I started a nonprofit. And everyone knows when you start a nonprofit, everything is really out of pocket. And so for me, the nonprofit it's important. And I understood where, his vision was, he can make a lot of money selling these bone density machines. So he poured their savings into it. So for me, I put a lot of my earnings into the nonprofit because I see that it helps our youth. It actually gives them that even playing field. It breaks the barriers for them. It allows them to see things that they wouldn't normally see if their parents had to pay for it out of pocket. And some of them don't even have parents that can afford to pay for certain things out of pocket. So for me, just introducing the kids to a life that they're not accustomed to, it gives me more than, I guess, something that money would give me. So it's just the giving back, the growing people, the growing our youth, and they're trying to change the trajectory for them. So despite of everything I've been through, this is like one of the best things that I can do to give back. And it's for kids that's been impacted by gun violence, or kids that's in an underserved area, because my brother died by gun violence. My nephew died by gun violence. I had cousins and uncles that died by gun violence. So it's just uplifting our community, empowering our youth. And so if that's the only thing that I have to give to try to make this place a better place, I'm okay with that.
It's a scene in the movie where, Linda decided to leave Chris because I guess the struggle has become unbearable on her part, and she lost faith. She was no longer happy. So, and he said it was within that moment that he thought about Thomas Jefferson and what he contributed to the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. And it intrigued him because happiness doesn't just exist. It's something you have to pursue. And looking at it from that standpoint, everybody defines their happiness differently. So with you, Keycha, like, what's your happiness that you are pursuing? What does that look like?
I mean, it's a combination of different things. You always want to be in a healthy, happy relationship, so you're going to pursue that. You want the world to be a better place. So if I can empower the kids and change their future, that makes me happy. Finding, I'm going to say, my nonprofit, I found my purpose with that. My career, I'm still looking for something that actually makes me really happy, but that's one thing that makes me happy. And it pushes me to do better. It pushes me to want more out of life, because if I can show them that, sky's the limit and people can't cap off your achievements or what you want out of life, I'm letting them know that anything in this world is possible. And it was a scene where Chris Gardner was telling his son that people will tell you things that you can't do just because they're not capable of doing it. So I don't want them to ever think that there's a limit to things that you can do. Whatever you put your mind into, as long as you stay consistent, you can do it. And I want them to know that.
And did you ever experience that? Like, because that was somebody closest to Christopher, which is his dad. He kind of got caught up in the moment himself of looking at what he couldn't do in his past and telling his son don't get his hopes up. And that was deep for me, because just that one slip up, it's like that toxicity that Linda was pushing up on him kind of rubbed off, or just what the world was showing him, because what wasn't in the movie, Chris was saying that his stepfather was like that. you know, abusive and pressing out upon them. So that's tough gets passed down unconsciously, but then he caught himself and told his son, like, don't even let me tell you that of what you can't do. Did somebody ever like real close to you try to like shatter your dreams at one point?
I think a lot of people, we live and grow up in an area where we're all taught like that, where we can't see the stars because we're so close to the ground, and we're just around people that's like that, telling you what you can't do, or you're a fool to think that. You know, my ex-husband used to tell me that a lot, you know. Even with the degree, you have a master's degree. Why are you doing a nonprofit? Because it's my purpose. It's something that I love to do. I really love making a difference with these kids. I think that when Chris Gardner's son had told him, how did it go? The man prayed to God that he wouldn't drown. And God had sent him 2 people.
Right.
And the man still didn't pay attention, and he still ended up drowning. That's like when God sent us stuff, we don't pay attention to what God is sending us. We want to do what we want to do instead of what God is showing us what to do, or the help that he's given us, because we're too proud. So I try to remove that proud barrier from myself. And it's like, you know, you can have all these people around you that's negative, but at some point you're going to have to close that negativity out. Because for me, I have a daughter, and I want my daughter to know that you can achieve whatever you want to achieve. You just have to be consistent, and you have to believe in yourself. Even if you're the only person that believes in you, be your biggest cheerleader and keep pushing.
Right. And where did you develop that type of frame of mind you have now?
You know what, to be honest, as I started to get older, my brother, like, he was naturally athletic. Everything he did, he was really good at it. So I just felt like when we were younger, I felt like he tried to be my daddy. He tried to just do everything to boss me around because he thought he was my boss. But I didn't understand. He was teaching me, you know, teaching me how to save, teaching me how to set my goals, teaching me to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve. I didn't see it then, but it was, you know, in my big old age where I started reflecting and I started understanding. I think my real turning point was 2015. I went through my divorce. It was like a breaking point because I had so much death within my lifespan where I never just really grieved. And once I went through my divorce, and then my kids started, you know, spending time with their dad, because I had never been away from my kids. Everything we did was, you know, based as a family. And then we had the little league sports and stuff. But when I really had time to see myself, I started just reflecting on everything, started realizing that I wasn't healed and I needed to heal, started realizing that I wanted more out of life, and that, you know, God had put me here for a reason, because I have always been a giving person, but it was, and I did a lot with youth. I was a cheer coach, a baseball coach, but I never really did anything where it really gave back to the people that was impacted by gun violence. And that was one of the things I wanted to do for my brother. And it works.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And you have a book out now, right? What's the title of it?
Navigating Parenthood While Black. So it's short stories of different families. And it starts off with a little bit about my story. You know, sometimes we're not in the street life, but we're recruited to the street life, per se. My brother was out there in the streets. He wasn't a killer. He did sell drugs. So he was one of those people that knew how to get out there and knew how to make money. And so we always find ourselves where if he's not there, somebody's coming in to break in the house or whatever the case may be. So it tells about one particular incident, and it's just me and witnessing death and witnessing how I had to be resilient, regardless of what I went through and the trauma I faced, because a lot of us don't realize we face trauma. You know, when your friends and family is killed on the streets, or, you know, you see somebody get beat up, that's trauma. So we never unpack our trauma. We just carry it over in our adult life. So for me, I just started reflecting on stuff. Even to the very first time I seen trauma, one of my childhood friends, we're in elementary school, and he was killed. No one asked us how we felt. Guess what? We went right back to school because it was nobody that focused on mental health at that time and how it impacted us. So regardless of what went on in our life, we still had to carry on as if everything was normal. And back then that was normal to us. It wasn't until my big age, again, I realized that my childhood wasn't really normal, even though I thought it was normal. That was the last era where we played hide go seek and doorbell ditch. But that wasn't normal. All the other little things that, you know, started happening, the drive-bys and stuff. That was abnormal. And we carried a lot of that stuff into our childhood life. And then we wonder why we have so many people in jail, because we had unhealed people having these little humans. And if they wasn't healed, what were they doing for the kids?
Right. And was there any like trauma that you carry with you from your childhood that you realized that you kind of smeared off into your kids before you began healing?
I did. I'm gonna say for my son, I kind of enabled him to be lazy. I didn't want my son to go to the streets. So I gave him everything. I did everything for him. So I felt that he would never have to go to the streets, not knowing that I was handicapping him. I enabled him not to live to his full potential. And then, you know, when I started talking to him, you know, as he got older, I'm like, what happened? You know, you had everything. He said, but I never had to do anything. You did everything for me. If I didn't clean my room right, you cleaned it for me. And he was right, because I never wanted my child to go to the streets. You know, all the friends, everybody come to the house. We go on a trip, everybody can go on a trip with us. I mean, and that's the type of household we had, but I should have been a little bit more stricter with him. Not that he's out there in the streets, but he really didn't start figuring life out until probably 25. And so to me, he's a little behind to where I would like to see him, but he's still functioning. And he's, you know, he's still doing good, but I felt like I hindered his growth. And I think with my daughter, it changed a little, because I don't think, I'm going to say, the shackles wasn't on her as much as they was my son, because I had my little cousins down. I had my brother get killed. You know, I had all these people get killed, and my whole thing was saving my child.
And would you say in the movie that it was decisions made by one of the characters that you can relate to more specifically?
I would say with Chris, with his son, regardless of what he went through, he didn't want to separate from his son. I mean, his whole goal was he didn't want his son to be without a father, because he was without his father. He didn't meet his father until his adult life. So he didn't want that for his child. I mean, and that just sat with me, and I understood that, because it was a moment where I felt like I hit my rock bottom when I separated. I mean, I made some stupid decisions. I decided to move with someone thinking that it would work after I got divorced. And then I felt like it didn't work. So I done stayed in a hotel before. I felt that part. And I had to rebuild myself, rebuild my credit, rebuild a lot of things, because I didn't want my kids to see me struggle.
And looking at the entire movie in totality, what would you say is like the underlying life lesson that you take from the movie into the real world that you hold with you?
That no one can define your future. You are the gatekeeper of your future. I mean, regardless of all the obstacles that was thrown at him, he was resilient.
Wow.
And I'm gonna say, Black people are like that, and that's just being real, because we're born with strikes against us. And in the workplace where, the supervisor kept on making him go get the coffee, move my car, do this, do that, he sucked it up.
Wow.
A lot of us do that every day in the work field. You have to suck it up to get along, and it's a struggle for me, because I'm not that person. I'm vocal, and I feel like that was a way of trying to put him in his place to make him feel like he didn't fit, but he didn't bite into it. And he would come back and work even harder, even though he didn't have all the time like everybody else. He was creative in what he needed to do in order to achieve his goals. And I feel like I had to do that a lot. You have to get creative when it's something that you really want to do.
Definitely. Yeah, I believe everybody should subscribe to that lesson right there. Like, don't complain about what it is, take it for what it is. We got to swim 10 times harder as the next person in order to get ahead. And then it's like, in all actuality, no one man, like you just said, we are in control of our future, our narrative. No one man's completely barred from advancing himself in his family. Not completely. Some have it harder than others. Some start way later than others. But you can make it happen. With the right pressure applied over a duration of time, you can break ground. And once you do, don't stop. Keep going. Don't rest on your laurels. Is there anything else you got going on that you haven't mentioned already?
I mean, I have a lot of stuff going on. I do awareness walks all the time. We just did a breast cancer awareness walk. We did a domestic violence. I received Congressional Woman of the Year this year, a week or so ago. So I'm out there doing things. Always looking for volunteers for Keys to the Future, and figure out a way how to move forward, because a lot of us don't know how to move forward. A lot of us get stuck.
And how you move forward? What's your process?
Well, my brother left a lot of kids behind. He left 6 kids behind. And when my his kids' mother wasn't mothers that were ready to be mothers yet. They were still living their best lives, because he had kids when he was young. And so, and I had always wanted to be an aunt, but it kind of pushed me into a role of being a mother for everybody, being a grandmother, being a grandfather. Right. So it's like it takes a unique person to do that. But it was a lot of work. So it's just, we have to figure out how to heal. And a lot of us don't know how to do that. And I know talking to someone or seeing a therapist is taboo for everybody. But in our culture, we really have to start healing ourselves, especially if we plan on having kids or reproducing. And then you have to make sure you know who you're having kids by. That's important.
Right. Well, I appreciate you, Keycha, for coming on to the channel. You got more movies you want to talk about? Come on to the channel again. More projects that you end up producing. We're going to promote it and push it with you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Definitely. And be careful and protect your dreams. Like Chris used to always say, it could be those close
Definitely.
to you that you be so excited to share your dreams with, but then they just shatter them because they can see themselves. They have their own self-limiting beliefs. And since they can't do it, they press their fears upon you. And some of them may actually consider like they love you. They believe that what they're telling you is your best interest, but in actuality, like Keycha just said, like you are limitless. Like whatever you want to go for, you can make it happen. You just got to figure it out. There's always a way.